Okay, so physicalism implies that you're immortal. If you are here, you probably aren't looking for confirmation, you're looking to be convinced. So you haven't seen this for yourself, it wasn't obvious to you. It's obvious to a lot of us who understand physicalism. Some people don't, so that's why you're here, and that's why I'm here to explain this. So there are two different views about consciousness. One is the computationalist view, where you have discrete entities, let's call them neurons, that can be either on or off. They could be on or they could be off. And they are obviously spread out across space and time. So they make a four-dimensional geometry. We could say this is some weird four-dimensional geometry because they can only communicate with each other at most at the speed of light, right? They don't share the same hypersurface of the present. Okay, so that's one view, that we are this particular shape, this computation. The other view is that we are a standing wave pattern. So just think of it as this is a single entity, a single bound object. And that encodes for your experience, whatever that experience may be. And that would account for the so-called binding problem. Why is it that your visual field, for example, contains different parts all in the same picture, in the same frame, as opposed to you seeing a bunch of little discrete units? Of course, a computationalist would say that the binding is the object that is spread across space and time. It's just the geometry itself, which we just don't know yet how to draw those lines, but it's there. Okay, but whatever the case, it doesn't matter. Whatever the case is, all people who think about consciousness, no one thinks that you are your entire brain. No one thinks you're just this sphere that you could apply a vector on and then just goes to another location and it has the same identity. But yet this is a view of most people. This is called closed individualism, where you think you are the same person, you begin at birth and then you end at death. And somehow your brain is just magically the same brain. It's just my brain, right? It's not your brain, it's my brain, because it's similar or something. You don't really know what it is, but you think it's similar. Even though when you're this guy at 40 years old, and when you're this guy, you're 4 years old, your entire neural configuration is absolutely different, right? Every atom in your body is completely different, in a different location. You have changed completely, right? And so you are just as different as some other random 4-year-old, right? You're just as different as this other random 4-year-old, but we like to put a square in this other 4-year-old. We think he's fundamentally a different platonic solid, like this is another entity, another soul. But yet that's not how it works. This is just another configuration that's just as different. You no more are this guy than you're this guy. And now you could reduce the delta between successive moments, between different slices of moments, as much as you like. So we take your moment and make it as small as you want. You make it your delta t here as small as you want, and it's still not you. It's still not going to be you. So what I'm saying here is, what if we instead look at the moment when you were like 3.99999 years old, like a few seconds ago. You look at yourself a few seconds ago, that's still not you. Where is that person? Where is that experience? Where is that qualia? Where are those sounds? Where is those sights? You can't actually be that, right? So your entire configuration has already changed from moment to moment. There is nothing which is fundamentally conserved. So notice, we can make this as small as we want. have a really, really, really small denominator, essentially 0, we divide by that tiny, tiny number, you get infinity. That's perhaps a sort of metaphorical way of looking at it, but you are all people. And not just all people, but all slices of all people. But you can never tell from the inside of every computation in which you're in, or every bounded region of the wave function which encodes that particular experience. So this should be obvious. This should be obvious, but people don't see that. People apparently think that you are like this sphere that gets born. You have like your particular chromosomes, and they somehow guard your soul, and then you just go on, and then you get run over by a truck or something, and then you cease to exist forever. Like this soul that was traveling on this linear path ceases to exist forever. Whereas if you look at the computationalist view, there's just all these different geometries. You have other ones with different shapes. This is another experience here that has its own weird shape, and that's its own experience. And it exists from its inside. From its inside, it doesn't notice. It's just what it is. So this sheds light on everything. This solves the question of why am I me as opposed to something else. The answer is you are something else. And from the inside of that something else, you can't tell that you are also this. You literally can't tell, because otherwise you wouldn't be that. But there is only one canvas of the universe on which paintings can be made, right? There's only one. There's only one fundamental experiencer of things. And from each point-like location, it can't actually tell that it's part of an entire function, right? That goes through all kinds of experiences, because you're just that particular point. The point doesn't know about other points that are different from it. So that's our situation. And as humans, this makes a lot of evolutionary sense, why we feel like we are traveling through time, why we feel like we are separate individual beings who have a consistent history and future. It makes perfect evolutionary sense. And it makes physical sense, given our constitution. But it's not what's going to happen. So what's going to happen is, at a certain point, your computational complexity gets degraded enough. So you get a very, very, very simple shape. Once you get like really advanced stages of Alzheimer's, you're in your deathbed, you're about to die, you get to a computation which is so simple that it is indistinguishable from a whole bunch of other computations that exist across the universe. So it might be like the simplest possible one, which is not complex at all, and it is just indistinguishable from a whole bunch of other dying creatures or toddlers or something, right? That just raw experience of whatever that is. And then it's still an open question, how is it that these are causally related, quite specifically? Because we haven't solved the mapping problem exactly of what exactly is mapping onto the phenomenology at any given moment. But we know for sure that whatever it is, it's not as simple as, I was born at some point and then I just, there's a vector for my identity, for my soul, that bears my name. Because obviously, you're being changed every moment, and we can merge brains, right? What happens if I have half of my brain with half of your brain? Who survives? Whose soul survives? The answer is you don't have a soul in the first place. Experience just continues. Your memories won't continue. Your sense of identity, your coherent sense of identity, all these things aren't going to be protected by anything, by quantum immortality even. That's not what is actually meant. What is meant is that experience itself continues to exist from its own inside. It always exists. And it doesn't realize that it's at different locations. Okay, so that's basically the main idea. So this also trespasses into one of the discussions that there's a lot of confusion here in quantum mechanics, where you have the Schrödinger equation describing reality, but yet people feel tempted to invoke Copenhagenism, where you have wave function collapse. You have wave function collapse into a single reality, right? A single reality. Because you don't want to deal with all these other regions where you have your clones and you have other universe, right? You have an entire different possibility where instead of seeing quark up, you see the quark down. And you don't want to deal with that, so you say, oh, well, reality just collapses into one location. But yet the Schrödinger equation doesn't say that. The Schrödinger equation says both are real. So what's going on there? People get very confused. People invoke this extra machinery on top, which is not even well defined, which is the collapse postulate. They think, well, something just collapses. Observation just collapses it. But the fact is, both happen. Both happen. There's nothing paradoxical here. It just happens that when you're here, you don't notice that you're here. And when you're in this one, you don't notice that you're in this one. Just like I don't notice that I'm also in the past, and I'm also in the future, and I'm also other people, and other kinds of sentient beings besides people, right? You can't, by definition, you can't notice because you're inside of it. It's just a matter of how could you tell? How could it be otherwise? And so if you're not capable of this abstract reasoning, you're just fundamentally blocked. You're just going to have to go ahead and approach a very simple state of mind, and then you'll find out for yourself. But then you won't be able to tell. So humans are kind of stuck in a limbo, right? Because you're not, your mind's complexity is not degraded enough or simple enough that it would be unified and not even budge, not even bother to question that it's unified. That's what happens when you have a very simple mind. And then you have a very complex, very advanced mind way up there for whom it's very easy to have these abstract thoughts. And so, for instance, Einstein was an open individualist. In Buddhism, you have empty individualism. And so it seems like once you get past a certain capacity for abstract thought, you can actually get this and not be confused. But most humans are stuck in this limbo right here where they feel very closed. They feel such a strong visceral sense of being an encapsulated object that has a persistent identity that they can't notice. So you are stuck right now in limbo, but that doesn't mean you aren't also here and you're also here. You're in all places. So that's why you're not going to cease to exist, whether for good or for bad.